Howdy, team. Sorry for that little delay. In this video, we are going to talk about some of the complications with for loops. So we are going to investigate what we call a fence post problem. Sometimes it's also called a loop and a half problem. So it's kind of deceptive. The most common way to think about this is, let's say that you wanted to print the number 1 to something separated by commas. So if the input was 5, we would want it to look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, we as humans definitely understand that 5 does not need a comma at the end. It's a little bit harder to convince a computer of the same thing. So here we have a really simple for loop format. We have max equals 5. This is, we're creating a final value. We only want it to go up to 5. We're using it here so we don't have a magic number. We're calling it max in a variable first. So we say max equals 5. We want our I to start at 1, and we want to increment our I until it reaches max. And each time inside that, we want to print I and a comma. We're just printing here, we're not println. So at the end, if we want a new line, we're going to add a new line there. So this seems pretty reasonable. I want you, and if you're watching this with a friend, talk about it. What do you think? What is the output of this going to be? Pause here. Okay, you probably unpaused. I hope you really did pause. But anyway, let's run this in the code so we can see what will happen. So here I have that same code. We set our max equals 5. We're going to go I equals 1, incrementing by 1 each time up to and including the value of max. So we're going to go, the value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inside that, we are going to print the value followed by a comma, and at the end, we're going to print a new line. When I run that, we don't totally get what we're expecting. We have an extra 5 here, and there is a space. You just can't see it. So this is not what we want. It adds a comma at the end because we're adding that comma always, every time. And that is a little bit less than ideal. So let's try something new. What if we try to add the comma before each value instead of after? So I have that written here, and I am going to comment it out. Remember, control or command, and then the slash, the one with the question mark on it, allows you to comment and uncomment big blocks of code. So here I'm going to say, now we're going to add the comma before the I. So this should prevent us from getting this comma at the end. Let's see what happens. Okay, so still not ideal. Now we're just getting the comma in the space before the first number, which is again not what we want. So how do we deal with this problem? Let's think about the analogy that I like to use when talking about this kind of problem. Think about this sort of problem like a fence. So a fence, in this case, we're printing n numbers, but we only need n minus 1 commas. So we need number, comma, number, comma, number, comma, number, no comma at the end. So this is similar to building a fence with wires. So we have a fence post here, and then we have some wires, and a fence post and some wires. But we can't add wires at the end of the fence. They're just going to like drop to the ground. That it's not going to actually protect anything. You have to have a fence post at the end. So if we have our for loop, like for the length of the fence, place a post, place some wire every single time, we're going to end up with this extra dangling wire at the end that's not actually great. A fence post loop is going to make sure that you only add the wire in between the posts, not after or before every post. Otherwise, the wire is just going to dangle there. So this means that one of your posts needs to be outside of the loop. So it could be the first post, like you add a statement outside the loop, you're going to place the initial post, that first one, and then after that, you're going to say add some wire. You're going to place the post outside the loop. Then you're going to go through the number of posts minus one because you've already added one. And then you're going to add some wire and then place a post. Do I need to for loop again? Yes, more wire, another post, more wire, another post. And at the end, we will end with a post instead of some dangling wire. And you're always going to end up with something like this. That does mean that you have to have one of the posts on the outside. Now, it is also possible to reverse this a little bit. Maybe you want to add the post at the end. So your for loop inside would be place a post and then place some wire, place a post and then place some wire. So the wire is at the end of the for loop, and then after that you place the last post. So let's look at that in our code here. We have a third attempt here. I'm going to comment it out. I haven't actually tested this one, so I might have gotten it wrong, and then we'll get to debug it together, which would be great. So, all right, let's run it. Ooh, interesting. So in this case, we have all of the commas. Our last one really does not have a comma, which is good, but we're including 5 2 times. So here we get to debug a loop for the first time, which is really great. This is one of those off by 1 errors I was talking about before. We're just looping 1 too many times. So let's read the code. Okay. It looks like here we're adding our post, our final post at the end. So inside we need to place a post and then we need to place the wire. So we need to do it in that order. Here we have int I equals 1. So we're starting at 1 just like we should. And then we have I is less than or equal to max. This is going to go all the way up to 5. We don't want it to go all the way up to 5, right? We want it to go up to 4 because 5 is our last fence post and we need to do that outside of the loop. So I am going to say max minus 1. And let's see what happens. There we go. Now we got it right. So I'm going to go over this loop one more time. We start with a value of I equals 1. We are going to increment the value by 1. We're going to make I bigger by 1. And we're going to keep executing the body while our I is less than max minus 1. We want to do minus 1 because we print the max out here. So we don't want to print max inside the loop. The fence post in this case is printing the number, and the wire or the glue in between is going to be this comma and space. So we only want to add the commas in between the fence posts, so in between the values. And this way we are going to end the loop with a comma. Then we print the last fence post at the end, and we get a nice number that looks something like that. Okay, that is the end of this video, but keep in mind that fence post problems are sneaky and they show up very frequently. So just remember, when you have a fence post problem, you have to either place the first post before the for loop or place the last post after the for loop. But either way, something has to come out of the loop in order for the wire inside the fence post or inside the fence to be placed properly. All right, team, I will see you in the next video for our indefinite loops. We're going to talk about while loops next. See you there.